Runaways came back to Nationals with a vengeance, this time placing teammate Michael Dalton in the top 4, Naib at 9th, and 2 Runaways in the top 8 of the Battle Hardened. Let's learn from the team about their Bonds Zen list, all 9 of them.
Hey, what's up YouTube? Rutkowski going over the Zen Classic Constructed deck that myself and a bunch of my Fabled Runaways teammates brought to US Nationals this year. We had some great results with the deck. We had Michael Dalton make top 8, top 4. You can see his games on the stream. We had Charles Dunn and Pat Eschke both make top 8 at the Sunday Battle Harden. And I myself went on a 9-0 run at the Calling and then fell short and finished 10th or 11th. I can't quite remember at the Calling. So the deck performed quite well this weekend. Very positive win rate, obviously, overall with those results. And we'll break that down for you here. So jumping into the list, Zen is a very powerful new hero from part of the Mistveil. He's kind of all over the place right now. He's the best deck, the deck to beat at the moment. His power comes from this hero ability, being able to convert a flipped energy into any card in your deck that says combo, and a Crouching Tiger is very powerful, and that's what we're obviously building around. Before I go into equipment, I want to talk about kind of the main strategy of the deck, which is casting Bonds of Ancestry for crazy value. So we're playing all 9 copies. I know there's a lot of lists out there that are playing less. There's certainly other 9 Bonds lists, but this is very much so a 9 Bonds list. The entire list is focused around optimizing how consistently we're able to resolve a big double bonds, triple bonds turn, or any even a single bonds turn with an Artivore and an Ancestral Harmony goes kind of crazy. So this list is focusing on being able to resolve those turns, and on those turns that we're not, we want to be doing things that buy us space to do so. So we'll kind of cover that here. So getting into the equipment, this list was only playing the Tiger Taming Kakara for the weapon. Out of Nats, we saw the pretty smart and cool tech of running the Zephyr Needles for some of the race matchups. I think they're a very good idea. I would look to add those to this list. That's actually maybe the only thing I would change from this list at the moment. But for what we ran, it was just the Tiger Taming Kakara, and the entire deck, because of that, is built around the resource curve of either spending 1 resource a turn for a Descendant Gust Wave, or just a 1-for-5 finisher, or we're planning to always use 2 resources on the weapon and then have 1 remaining for the same cards. So going past the weapon, we have Traverse the Universe in the helmet slot. If you've been playing with or against part of the Mistveil heroes, you know that this is an extremely powerful piece of equipment, maybe the best in the game right now. You're always going to get 2 block value minimum from this. Sure, you could get a -1 counter and have less, but this will allow you to block 2. And basically our entire game plan of the deck revolves around this helmet piece. We are looking to transcend as aggressively as possible, and as soon as we have 1 flip chi in our deck, we're ready to block with this and have a 6-7 card hand and really pop off. I can't overstate how powerful adding an energy to your hand is. When you already have a nice hand, it just amplifies it by tutoring your best card, getting you a Tiger. If you have a all red hand in a turn where you just need to push a little bit, this gets you your blue pitch for the turn. You don't even have to use it for Zen's ability. It's so flexible, so powerful. Not really much more else to say about it. Next we have the 12-petal Kasaya. Extremely strong test. I know early in testing, I think people were a little unsure if this was better than Tunic. I think almost everyone agrees now it's without a doubt better. You get so many resources from this card. Every turn you transcend, you're getting 1 resource. If you double transcend, you're getting 2, which in this deck converts to 3 damage off the weapon. It's just very strong for the resource curve of the deck. I would say this build is also very much built around this card. Playing a 0-cost blue card and then following it up with the Transcend gives you the 1 resource you need for a Descendant Gust Wave, which is a very common play pattern for this deck. It also blocks 2. Once you get a couple Chi flipped in your deck, you kind of no longer need the resource ability, and you can cash this in much more aggressively than like say your Shuko, which we'll talk about next. And then this also has this kind of insane mode where if you pitch a flipped energy, you can create a Zen state token at the cost of your Kasaya. And in some matchups, that is absolutely game winning. It's one way to swing the mirror if you're behind. You can kind of defensively do this, and it'll often gain you like 10 value in that spot because it lasts for 2 turns, right? Against like Viscera and Rinset, you can block a ton of rune chance with this thing. Even against Kano, for example, it's like gives you a little bit more defensive capability when they're trying to combo you off. So I love this card. Would definitely recommend trying it out. In the arm slot, we have Tiger Stripe Shuko, of course. It's just a super efficient card. We're triggering Shuko most turns. It's definitely not like an every turn thing like 5 because we don't have access to the Tiger or Phoenix Flame every turn, right? It's just those turns when we're transcending, we're almost always turning this on. This turns 1 flipped energy, lets you tutor a Tiger and get Tiger Swipe. So that gives you a 1 card, 5 damage play, which is pretty nice. It does a lot more than that too, obviously. It's very nice against decks that have prevention effects like Prism. You can do some fun plays to try and force them to lose value on their blocks. Same with like Enigma. Yeah, and then against slow matchups where decks may potentially aim to fatigue you, this is probably your number 1 fatigue insurance. Like at the end of the game, when you're on like the second half of your deck, you are activating this every turn between Tigers and your blue attacks. Keeping this around is just so important, which is why I usually block with this last if I'm playing against any deck that has the possibility of fatiguing me. Lastly, I have a Japanese version of this card. I don't remember the English name, but these are your block 1 Blade Break Boots. When you block with these, you'll add a Crouching Tiger to your hand, which is kind of ridiculous. I was actually playing around with the idea of not having Artivore in my deck, but I found for the aggro matchup, you just need it because of how easily they're enabled with this card. Basically, this card just sits around until you find an Artivore, and then you block with them, you banish the Crouching Tiger, you go up 2 cards, your attacks get +1 for the turn. It's pretty ridiculous. This is also a really nice sort of like insurance card for your big turns. I guess mainly against brutes with like the flesh bag. On the turn where you block your helmet, you usually want to be blocking with your boots as well, just to give them extra cards in the way of the ones you're trying to protect for that intimidate trigger. And there's other spots that come up very similarly to that where just having extra cards make a big difference. Like against New, for example, with their attack react helmet, it's usually somewhat face up when they're planning to just go like blue attack, transcend, and then make you banish a card from hand. And if you can kind of get a good read on that, you can block with your boots and just banish that Tiger and kind of mitigate that effect, which is really strong. Okay, let's go into we should talk tokens first. So this deck, you want many Crouching Tiger tokens. I carry 10 with me. I don't think you need 10. That's probably the number I would bring though, in case you do some like ridiculous Tiger swipe turns. This list, which you'll see in a minute, doesn't really run any Tiger generators outside of Transcend cards and the boots. So I don't really need that many. And then make sure you have your Zen State token handy. It's an extremely powerful token like we talked about. So outside of 9 bonds, let's go into the red cards in the deck. We're playing 3 red Descendants. These having built-in go again, like they're slightly below rate being a 1 for 3 go again, but it's like 1 point under and the upside is insane. They allow you to pull off natural Bonds line hands where you just have a Descendant and a Bonds and you get to play it from there. Once you start pairing that with like an energy, you're now at like a 2 bonds turn and it gets pretty ridiculous. These are just good cards. They say combo, they hit off your Ancestral Harmonies. The cards is great. It's also just another target when the games usually play in a way where you're trying to transcend early, right? Once you accomplish that, you're kind of in the waiting room for a hand that pushes usually about 30 damage. 20 damage is kind of small. It depends on how the game's playing out. But you're basically waiting for cards like Descendant Gust Wave, which when you pair it with a singular energy, you're guaranteeing a big turn, right? Like this plus the weapon represents 6 damage because you make a tiger. Energy pitch for red bonds, that gets like a red fluster. You're now at what, 6 plus 8? 14 damage off of 3 cards. Like it gets insane. So this is just letting you like pop off sooner, which is very important because the meta and the format is very fast currently. Put those to the side. Next, we have 300 wins. This card is just fantastic. It's like fine to draw on its own. They obviously pair really well with each other. These are, I'd say, mostly in the deck. So we have Bonds of Ancestry targets. These are your only generic go again in this build. So you really want to be getting one of these into discard pile as soon as possible, so that when you have hands with like a finisher already or multiple finishers, this becomes your best Bonds target, right? Next to that is Tiger Swipe, which is usually just better 100 wins when you're using your hero ability because you make that Crouching Tiger. Same thing with Bonds of Ancestry. If you just have an extra tiger that you didn't use otherwise, this becomes your best go again target. If you play a tiger before, it comes in for 4. People have a really hard time, at least currently, evaluating whether they should block this card or not. I think people tend to get it wrong. I think as we go forward, they'll start letting these hit more often. One of my favorite things to do, which we'll get to later, is like pairing a Tiger Swipe with a Mauling Key. So playing a tiger into the Tiger Swipe while the Mauling Key is like face up on the table somewhere. It means we're really only fighting over 1 point of value, but it I don't know, it adds a lot of incentive to your opponent to block, which is generally what you want to have happen. The other notable thing about this card is it's a base 2 attack, which is kind of crazy. It synergizes so well with Chuko. Being able to present a 5 unblockable go again against decks that care about prevention effects is just really absurd and really powerful. So we are playing 3 red Flusterfists. I know a lot of the lists running less than 9 bonds ignore this card, which makes sense. But I think if you're playing 9 bonds, they're kind of necessary. This is the most consistent way to get the maximum damage out of your bonds lines. There's no better rate on a combo card than 4 damage for 1 card. Playing all 3 copies so that we're more likely to find them. They're fine on their own. I honestly don't mind. This deck blocks like pretty well, so I don't mind blocking 2 cards, throwing a 0/4, and then setting a combo piece. Yeah, it's really just about getting your maximum damage, which is what you see with these Mauling Keys as well. These are basically there so you can tutor them when you have an extra resource. They end up being your best finisher as a 1 for 5 and 6 if they let it hit. The other thing I love about this card is, I guess, some of the downside that you see from these like 9 bonds or heavy combo list are you do have quite a few cards that don't have go again and don't play well in combination with each other. So if you have like 3 bonds and a Mauling Key, I guess that's a bad example, but that can be fine, right? Because if one of those are a blue, you can now block 6, fill your graveyard, and you're still coming with a 2-card 7, which is slightly above 8. So for the turn cycle, you're like probably falling slightly behind the deck you're playing against, but like very slightly, and you're now set up to kind of close the game. And again, that's because we're playing the Kakura. So the resource curve is built around pitching a blue for swing for 2 and then end on a 1 cost on those off turns. If you haven't tried Mauling Key in your Zen deck, I encourage you trying them. They're very strong and very consistent in that way. Okay, closing out our red cards, we have our Disruption package. So currently the list runs 3 Censor. Basically, because of all the reasons I said for Mauling Key, you can't tutor these with Sensibility, obviously, but these are such a nice way to buy you space when you don't draw your like crazy combo turn and you're ready to go off. These buy you time to get there. You get to very efficiently pitch a blue for a weapon and then come in with Censor for 5. People really respect this effect. In most cases, if you call the right card, you do kind of just like stop the entire turn for your opponent. it's not always obvious what you should be calling. So it's actually like a very interesting card in that way. Like, people probably should be letting these sit more often than they are, but the risk is just so high that they tend not to. And again, it's really there because it fits the resource curve perfectly. And if we're not having a combo turn, I want to be doing something that either slows my opponent down or prevents them from throwing disruption back by taking cards from their hand, right? Which, like, if you're playing a sensor and you're setting like a key combo piece, like a Bonds or an Art of War, you can even just name Command and Conquer or whatever like hurts you the worst at that time, even if it doesn't feel like the completely correct card to call. The sensors are also just very strong if they are on your like big pop-off turn. If you present like 20 to 30 damage and end on a sensor, you had lots of times where your opponent's probably tempted to block with equipment or cards from hand. That, or they're also trying to keep a full grip for like a 30 card turn, or a 30 damage turn rather, and then adding on a disruptive effect like sensor is just so backbreaking. And that'll apply to all of these as we get into them. Command and Conquer is next. Running 3 copies. This is mostly because the Azalea matchup is pretty close, and this is probably the best disruption we have into them. The card's just good into a lot of decks. I also think this card is extremely powerful against new. They often have to keep a full grip to really disrupt you, at least in a way that's hard to play around. So threatening to take their arsenal, which they do tend to take setup turns, is really strong there too. Last we have Blanche. So Blanche is a pretty cool card. I think it's just the best Prism Popper. It's a 7, which is super important. They're usually playing 9 copies of the -1 Herald. So these are kind of true poppers in that sense. They also have a very powerful effect into Prism. Like, if they're not able to pitch yellow cards, if you take away the color, they're not getting go again. So it's really good on both sides in that matchup. They're also completely reasonable against, I'd say, all 3 of the new Mistveil heroes. They all need to play blue cards to Transcend. There's other spots where they're good too. So if we end up cutting Censor or some number of CNC from the deck, I think these are always in the deck as long as Prism's being played. It just has a huge amount of percentage points to have these true poppers. These can easily slot in. Like, I'm not playing all 9 effects in any matchup currently. So if we do need more deck slots, you could consider cutting Censors and placing them with Blanche in the matchups. Okay, going into the yellow slot, we have 1 singular Descendant Gustwave yellow. This was a very last minute addition. Basically, the way our sideboard plans worked out is we needed a proactive card for a couple matchups. And the theory behind the Gustwave is you definitely don't want to be playing this on its own. You don't want to be pitching it. You don't want to be blocking it. So it's like a little hard to justify the slot. But again, the way these aggro matchups play out, there's kind of 3 phases, 2 phases. It's like 2.5 phases. Phase 1 is Transcend at all costs, right? Once you do that, you basically want to have like 1 kind of big combo turn, which is usually that Transcend turn. That's why I say it's like 1.5 steps. And then you're just waiting for any card or like any hand that pushes above like 25 damage, with the addition of a Crouching Tiger and a Flipped Energy from your equipment blocks. And Descendant Gustwave is one of the cards that enable that. This lets you go and tutor Bonds of Ancestry and have a big turn. So it's just another target for that. That's mainly why it's here. Again, we're playing 9 Bonds of Ancestry, so it's more likelihood of hitting natural bonds turns as well. Last, we have 3 Art of War. I touched on these a little bit. I did try to cut them. It proved to be not the correct choice. Again, the main target, the first Art of War you see, you're almost always going to slam your boots to make a Crashing Tiger and vanish it that way. They also pair extremely well with Transcending. If you play a 0 cost into a Transcend, your chest will make you 1 resource. You can then respond by activating Zen, tutoring. Usually you have to get something generic there. If you already have like a combo piece in hand, Descendant or Bonds, you get the other, and it's just nuts. But you can just tutor like a red 100 wins, and then holding priority, you use the 1 that you generated to banish the Crouching Tiger and cast the Art of War. Okay, going into the blues, we are playing 9 Transcend cards. It's every 0-cost Transcend that exists and the Sacred Art. I'll go through these a little bit. Basically, I would play 20 Transcend cards if I could. These are all of the ones you feasibly can. I don't think the Fable is realistic to play or to flip, which is why we're not playing that. But let's go through these really quickly. So the Sacred Art is really powerful. It can be awkward at times. I wouldn't be afraid of just pitching a blue to choose one mode and just transcending. Like if it's your first transcend, it's worth like 10 plus. It's like absurd. But this card is so good if you go into long games where, again, decks are like trying to fatigue you or run you out of gas. This is just another enabler for a really strong turn. It says it makes 2 tigers, but you're also transcending. So realistically, you're making 3. It lets you go really wide on your chain links. And it pairs very well with your power cards. So the pot shuffles, we can move past that. Preserved Tradition is really nice. Again, it's really just against the slow decks in those types of matchups. Where like often when I'm casting this card, I am putting back the card I'm about to tutor with Sensibility, which is a very powerful effect. Drop in the Ocean, it can be clunky. It's not the best energy in the deck, but it transcends, and we need to transcend, so it's in there. Passover. One thing worth noting for Preserved Tradition and Passover, Preserved Tradition says target action card. So you're a little restricted on the options there, but your opponent can respond with a Passover, and if they banish the card that you've targeted, the effect fizzles and you fail to transcend, which can be a little bit of a blowout. So what I want to point out with Passover is that when it doesn't have any other impact, I would avoid choosing action cards against Mystic Heroes because they cannot, in response, bottom the card that you targeted, right? Like if you target an equipment piece or an instant, they can't interact with that card, and you'll for sure get your energy. Gain of Life is great. +1 can be great. It can be hard. Forces you to attack first, basically. Rousing Sun Setting Moon is extremely powerful. It's like the best one paired with another inner chi because you can play this, respond with the other one, transcend, get a resource, and then bottom that transcend card. It also pairs nicely with your boots. Like when you see this Rousing Sun and you're planning to use it to transcend, you can just block boots that turn and draw an extra card, bottoming the tiger that you made. So it's got a lot of power to it, and same with Path Well Traveled. The go again usually doesn't matter, but sometimes it enables you to start your turn with like a blue Fluster Fist, which we'll see soon, which giving that go again feels really nice. Good way to transcend. Sometimes this is paired with other transcend cards, and you can lead with something like a CNC or a sensor in that way and just extend the turn and even like play 2 disruption in one turn. Okay, rounding out the blues, let's look at our blue combo cards. You're going to see a lot of 3 elves because we're playing 9 bonds, right? So we want to be finding our key combo cards as quickly as possible. 3 blue 100 wins. 0 for 1 go again that allows you to transcend is actually very powerful. These are just always good. These are nice to see off of Ancestral Harmony. They're blues, but it's just free damage. 0 cost go again is just really solid. Blue Descendant like way overperforms in this deck. This being a starter that lets you transcend and is also the starter for the big combo you're trying to pull off. Just means you're always tutoring for Bonds of Ancestry. The cards is great. And then we have 3 blue Flusters. Again, we just want to maximize the number of these so that we're guaranteeing our maximum damage every turn. These are fantastic to block with because they represent a 0 for 4 later. They're also fine to transcend off of. Like obviously it's suboptimal to play a card without go again and then transcend. But if it's your first chi for the game, it's usually just worth it again. Like your whole game plan revolves around just getting that first chi. So I don't mind these either. Okay, getting into the power blues, which are some of the most powerful cards in the deck, which is kind of ridiculous and part of the appeal of this deck. Like all of your blues are just kind of insane. Ancestral Harmony, fantastic card. This is like one of your best transcend targets. It costs 0. It has go again. So very easy access to transcending. You don't need to hit with this card. Like the +1 alone, you're almost always getting at least 2. Usually it's like 3. Some turns it's way beyond that because you're doing like triple bonds or whatever. But any turn where you get a free card off of the top with this is just completely ridiculous. Like your win rate probably skyrockets if you hit pretty much anything with this card. And if you ever hit a Bonds or a Descendant Gust Wave, I think you just win the game on the spot. Levels of Enlightenment. This card is so ridiculous. I love this card. This being a blue is just absolutely absurd. This card plays really well off of just a single blue. So you can go weapon into 5 like we've talked about, and this isn't a red card. Like this has like no cost to put in your deck at box 3. More often you're probably going like weapon into draw a card, which is also a really nice play. When you have Transcend cards, this is probably the best target. Like they're all kind of contextual, but pitching a blue to play this, responding with a Transcend, and then responding with Zen means you're getting 2 modes immediately. This card is unreal on Art of War turns. You're often able to get to like all 3 modes. But like anytime you're drawing a card where you already have like an Anthem effect on the board is just so powerful. Yeah, this card is ridiculous. It's like maybe the best card in the deck, and it's not even like a synergy specific to this deck. And then we're playing 3 Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast. So we're a 9 Bonds deck. These represent some of our biggest turns. It's just another combo piece, right? When we've already transcended once and we're in that waiting room. If you find a Shifting Winds and another Energy or a Bonds of Ancestry, like the game's probably over. You're gonna do like, it's dependent on how many bonds are in your discard pile, but you're gonna get that big turn. So it's just another target for that. These are also just efficient Transcend targets. Like if you look at the math on them, anytime you pitch a blue, and this of course is a little graveyard dependent. But if you pitch a blue, play this, Transcend, you now have 3 floating. You can, or even if you just have like an Energy, you can go Zen, attack with the weapon, attack with Tiger, name the Tiger, some kind of Gust Wave, you play a Bonds. This was, and you finish with a Red Fluster, right? So you've done 11 damage off of this plus a blue, plus a Transcend card or a Bonds. So it's very efficient there. And if you Transcend off of a red, it's still fine. Like you pitch a red for this, you do the same line, you just don't get to weapon. This was a 3-card 8. You're like 1 point below, right? But you transcended. I think the cards is really powerful. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do. Like you can, I had one game where I had like 400 wins in hand or 3, and I just named my Tigers 100 wins. So we went as big as we could that way. With your Fluster Fist, that's also the big part of the upside of running Fluster Fist is if you name open the center, they all become Salt the Wounds, which is kind of absurd. And also don't be afraid to name Surging Strike when you have Descent Gust Wave. Because these cost 1, it might mess with your resource curve. But if you don't have a discard pile full of bonds, it's often right to call Surging Strike, so you make your Descendant Gust Wave free and also give it that +2. All right, rounding out the blue cards, we have our sideboard slots. We ran 2 Cosmic Awakening. We did a little testing into Fatigue. The matchup's close. It's very winnable without these, but if you're playing against a truly dedicated Fatigue deck, it feels almost unlosable if you have these in. Snag, we had 3 to kind of ignore Bonds of Agony against our new opponents. When it lines up, it's just ridiculous. Like they invest usually 2 cards and a piece of equipment, and all you have to do is block 1, and then the Snag stops a bunch of damage, a bunch of disruption, and it ensures that you have your big turn. Notably, there are also 0-cost blues that don't take an action point, so they allow you to transcend, which is pretty nice. Finally, we have 3 Warmonger's Diplomacy. These are mainly for Azalea. They have nice upside against other Rangers and Runeblades. Yeah, they just are very swingy against Azalea, I would say, or they can be. I know a lot of Azaleas are playing the new gloves to play around this, which makes sense. Still kind of measuring the impact of these. They sometimes are hugely impactful, sometimes they're not. I could see cutting them. I could see wanting to keep them, but we chose to play 3. So that kind of sums up the deck. Again, we're very combo focused. This deck requires a lot of patience. It's really just about completing those couple steps, like Transcend, get some stuff in graveyard. You want to be particular about like your early tutors. Like I'll often sacrifice a damage or 2 early just to make sure I'm getting these key cards in my graveyard pile. And then as soon as you hit a hand that combos, you slam your equipment, and typically you're able to present at least 30 damage, if not more. But yeah, with that, let's look at some of the play lines. In terms of sideboard equipment, we have 3 cards. All 3 are mainly there for Kano. So I actually prefer Spell Void 2. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this. I certainly want to do more testing and see where I land going forward. I just found Arcane Barrier to be kind of unreliable. Like sometimes it is strictly better, sometimes it's strictly worse. My game plan at Kano is basically to say in 2 turns, 3 turns max, I will present lethal. I have 2 prevention available. Am I dead? Just percentage wise, that's been what's most effective for me. So giving up the boots and the gloves. So in that matchup, we're playing the standard Kasaya chest, which is important because our resource curve is really built around that chest and having that 1 extra resource on our Transcend turns. It also has the tremendous upside of creating a Zen state on their combo turn. And then finally, we have Pouncing Links, which against Kano, they don't attack us, so Traverse will never search an energy for us. Most likely, they could have a spicy build. But the Pouncing Links just lets us like either smooth out a hand that doesn't quite play or allow us to search like a Gust Wave or a Bonds or a Tiger Swipe on an Art of War turn is worth 5, 6 plus. So it just lets us go faster. I also really like this card in the new matchup. I find Traverse to be a little unreliable. I don't find it's very often that they present like a face-up attack with like no potential tricks behind it, where you're able to like safely block Traverse and guarantee the big turn, and also like have the big turn ready for that turn. Where Pouncing Links, 1, puts pressure on them to block anytime you're presenting a Descendant Gust Wave. If they don't block it, you can go search a blue Bonds and have like a little mini combo. But then it's also, if you are left with a full grip and they miss Disruption, this card is always ready to go. Like you don't need to Transcend. You don't need to have Chi in the deck. Like you can banish the Chi that you made previously. It's just very reliable. You're certainly sacking a little bit of value because you don't get to block. The damage output is actually pretty similar. The ceiling's probably, it's for sure lower, but it's more consistent, more reliable. So I like it there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's correct to play Links in more matchups. But yeah, I really like the card. Okay, so let's jump into some play lines. First, let's cover all of the different ways that we can Transcend in the deck. All of these lines, of course, will require a Transcend card. So I guess the most simple way to Transcend is to simply play a Transcend card and respond with another. As long as you hold priority, both of them will see that you've played a blue card. You will have 2 energy in hand, you'll get the effect on both, and you'll make 2 resources from your Kasaya. Looking at some other ways with Levels of Enlightenment, we kind of highlighted this line in the deck tech. If you pitch a blue and have 2 floating, you can then hold priority, play your Transcend as an instant. You will then get a resource off of Kasaya. You'll Transcend. If you continue to hold priority, you can activate Zen, which puts a Crouching Tiger in your hand, and you're now free to go search your deck. You almost always just want to grab a generic Go again, unless your hand has specific combo cards you want to see. But since we have a Tiger, let's go grab a Tiger Swipe. Shuffle the deck. When you then allow levels to resolve, you have 2 of the modes online. And it can obviously get even better than that if you've already managed to pitch another blue. So let's look at some more options. I'd say levels is probably the most powerful usually. There's some other good stuff we can do, however. So let's look at, you can of course play any 0-cost go again. That's blue. And then Transcend. Nice and easy. You gain a resource. In these cases, we're usually searching the deck for like a mauling key, right? To convert that resource into the maximum damage. I think I mentioned in some matchups, you can play a finisher, a blue Flusterfist for 2 and Transcend, and just hold that energy in your hand and it's fine. In some spots, you'll want to find a way to get that in the resource zone instead, but I don't think there's an issue. Harmony is another one of those 0-costers that plays pretty well. Next, we have a couple more 1-costers, so we can say we pitch this Harmony here for Blue Descendant Gustwave. We'll have 2 floating. Blue Descendant is such a good target because obviously once we Transcend here, we'll choose to search the deck for a Bonds of Ancestry. Let's just play that out. Activate Zen. Puts a Tiger in our hand. When we Transcend, we'll actually go up to 3 resources. We can then search for a red Bonds. There it is. We would then, of course, follow it up with this Bonds. And let's see what we have as targets. Oh, look, a mauling key. So we're going to plan to spend 2 on our weapon. So we would then banish mauling key to Bonds and search for a new mauling key. And we'll go ahead and go weapon, floating 1 resource, into the Tiger, into the mauling key. So this is a 3-card hand, right? And what do we come in for? We came in for 5, 7, 8, 13, or 14. Very strong turn. This is just showing the power of Bonds more than anything, right? And Transcending. So let's reset here. These will be there. Next line will be the Shifting Winds lines, which are pretty interesting. So I was kind of talking about these earlier. We're only looking at it from the context of Transcending here, right? So we pitch a blue. Our Tigers have names, and that's the only mode we get. But we've played a blue with Go again, so we can now Transcend. Go up to 3 resources. And we can, 3, not 1, immediately activate Zen, creating a Tiger, which we can now name. And you'll almost always just search for a Bonds here, right? Because we get to name this Tiger. So off of 3 cards, we're going to go weapon for 2 with 1 floating. Tiger for 1, naming Descendant Gustwave. So we're at 3. And then we'll do that same line of Bonds, banish mauling key, get mauling key from the deck, and attack. So this is, again, 3 cards, using a card for the mode you don't really want to be using it for. And we still got to 3, 7, 12, or 13 damage from 3 cards. Pretty ridiculous. And what I was saying in the deck tech video is we could actually reset here. And if we instead pitch a red for this line, so we could pitch a red for the Shifting Winds, and you can still activate Zen, get your Tiger, search the deck for a Bonds, and you can still name the Tiger Gustwave and go Bonds, banishing Flusterfist, searching for Flusterfist, and we still did 8 damage off of 3 cards, which is just slightly below rate, but now we have our flipped energy in the deck, which is really all that matters. So the case I'm trying to make there is that the cost of running this card is actually quite low, other than the blues in this deck being so absurdly powerful. But yeah, with that, let's switch gears into some other lines here. Okay, next let's look at how do we resolve a Bonds line when we have no discard power, right? So the only way to really make those good is to have a Go Again attack to start. So in this example, our hand will be a Descendant Gustwave, a Bonds of Agony, another Gustwave, which will be a pitch card, and 100 Winds. So we have no discard pile, right? So the Bonds has no target. So what you want to do is go 100 wins. After the attack resolves, you can then break the chain, play your Descendant, have 2 floating, play your Bonds, target the 100 wins, get a new 100 wins. Just got to find the new 100 wins. There you go. And then attack with your weapon for 2. It's pretty intuitive. It's not the craziest play, but there will be times where if you don't break the chain in that scenario, you miss out on a ton of damage, which can be difficult. Another example, if we reset those, let's put that back in the deck. Let's say you have... Let's do a fun one here. Just have to find the cards. Looking for path well traveled. There we go. So let's say we have the same blue gust wave, red bonds, blue fluster, blue path well traveled. This hand's actually kind of nuts. So we can lead blue fluster fist. We can give it go again with path well traveled, transcending. When we transcend, we'll gain a resource. We've attacked for 2 go again. Now we can break the chain and get this premium card, premium bonds target in our discard pile. And we can go Descendant for 1. We can bonds, search the fluster fist, get a red fluster fist. But now we also have a chi in our hand, which we could convert for 3 damage or 2 damage off the weapon. But why would we do that when we could instead activate Zen, get a tiger in hand. And in this case, our best target is a tiger swipe, which will attack for 4 go again. So that hand lets us go tiger, which activates Shuko, into tiger swipe, into fluster fist. Okay, so lastly, let's go through what a combo turn might look like. My deck is completely randomly shuffled, so we'll kind of do this live and see what we combo into. I gave myself a pretty good discard pile. It's basically got 1 copy of each target, so we have some flexibility. And in this scenario, we're saying our hand is a blue bonds of ancestry, a blue fluster, art of war, censor. So assuming our opponent's attacking us for just numbers, no disruption, this is like a perfect setup hand. So we'll look to block this blue bonds. So now we have additional bonds to target should we draw into a line that wants that. When we go to our turn, we can attack with Kakara for 2. Go again, floating a resource. And then on a censor, it's obviously contextual against the deck playing against, but let's say the only possible disruption that we're worried about is like Command and Conquer because we're going to set this Art of War. So let's say this hits. More realistically, they probably block 2 cards. So then we're getting to arsenal this Art of War. And now if they do throw a disruptive attack, they only have 2 cards. So it's coming in for 6 or 7 most likely. And our plan is to slam equipment anyway. But let's see what we draw and play out the combo turn. Okay, so we got a fun one. So we have Art of War, Fluster Fist, 100 wins. So our opponent attacks us, right? Let's just say, okay, it's just damage again. Great. We block with our boots, putting a tiger in that hand. And with Traverse, adding an inner chi to our hand, which I went ahead and pre-flipped. There's the chi. So now we'll shuffle and see what this combo turn looks like. But basically what I want to showcase here is this is why I like the disruptive cards. Optimally, every card, every hand would just be gas and allow us to present 20 plus damage, but that's just not really how it plays out. So I like having these disruptive attacks to play on the in-between turns to slow down the opponent and to buy a space to protect a combo that we set up. Besides Art of War, the other combo targets are like Shifting Winds, Ancestral Harmony, Bonds of Agony. Even Descendant Gust Wave is pretty good there. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards for this turn, which is already ridiculous. Obviously some are, or one of them's a tiger, but. So we have 2 hands with this, or 2 lines with this hand, right? This descendant represents the bonds, so it might actually be correct to pitch a red here. But we're gonna go full greed. We're gonna pitch the blue because we have 2 Ardivores. And we're going to keep this chi and hope that we hit. So let's see how it plays out. So we'll pitch this blue to play Ardivore. So I'll have 2 floating. We'll give all of our attacks +1, of course. And we'll choose to banish this tiger and draw 2. And we've drawn a descendant, so we're already in there. Like, this is going to be nuts. We'll play another Ardivore. So we'll go to 1 resource here. Another +1 to all the attacks. And we have 2 finishers, right? So we'll go ahead and banish 1 red fluster. We'll draw 2. And this is a big yikes for our opponent. So we have 2 red descendants, a red 100 wins, a red fluster for Serve Tradition energy. So let's play out how I would probably play this line. So I would go descendant for 5 go again. I would then activate Zen, put this tiger in hand, which in hindsight, I actually misplayed here, right? We had drawn, I think, a red descendant off the first Ardivore. So we should have probably searched Bonds right away and banished this tiger instead of a fluster. But because we had 2 finishers, this makes sure, gives us more likelihood the hand plays because we get all of the information first, right? But anyway, let's use Zen to search for Bonds. It's right there on the bottom. We'll then play Bonds because we have a descendant waiting. We'll go ahead and banish Bonds of Agony and search another Bonds of Agony. And this is usually when your opponent starts groaning. Anytime you tutor a Bonds, it feels really bad from the other side because it represents a ton of damage. And we'll get red Bonds. No need to shuffle really. So this is coming in for a 4, 5, 6 go again. And again, we're going pretty crazy here. We can then play our red descendant from hand, floating 2. This will attack for 5 again because 2 Ardivores. We can then play our Bonds for 6 go again. Now here we need to target a go again attack, right? Because we already have that finisher. And we can't do any more Bonds lines. Because we have double Ardivore, this tiger swipe will be better than the 100 wins, which is also the same attack value because we have another one to pair it with. But the tiger swipe represents another 4 damage, or 2 damage rather, off of this Ardivore. So here we'll play tiger. Oh, almost missed up. We will swing weapon for 2 go again because we have 2 floating and no other way to use that money. Then we will crouching tiger for 2, 3 go again from the weapon and the 2 Ardivores. And this is where the deck gets kind of out of hand. You can see how long this combat chain is already. Then we will tiger swipe, and this will be for 5 because of Shuko, 6, 7 from Ardivore, and it can't be prevented. This is, again, a pretty disgusting turn. We'll give our opponent the benefit of the doubt. We'll say they kept their block value until that tiger swipe. 100 wins will come in for 5 go again, and then we get to end on Fluster Fist for 6. And this was truly random. I completely shuffled my deck. You won't always hit as well as this, but just want to show the potential. Like once you have that interchain in your deck and you set any combo piece, this is kind of not super unlikely to happen. So ignoring these dice, our total output is 10, 16, 22, 24, 27, 34, 39. We did 45 damage. And this is why you may or may not want to play Zen. And we did this off of Ardivore, which like any Zen list can do. The reason I like 9 Bonds is because in that spot, right, like we drew a natural Ardivore, we could have set any Bonds, and having the extra 3 yellow Bonds just gives us more hits in the deck to allow us to attempt a combo. Yeah, this is kind of what the high roll of the deck can look like. I'm glad we got to showcase that a little bit. But yeah, I highly encourage you guys to try out the list and let us know what you think.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here,
Seven
but
envelope
we could do
in
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of Envelope and Darkness.